Anjana Salataya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Tapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitantam Sujivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Koruna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Chubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya
Ramacheva Narottamam
Ramacheva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswati Vyasam
Tato Jayamudidayet Nasta Preshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Shevaya Bhagavad Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. Today is Thursday, August 29th, 2024. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 24, Chanting the Song sung by Lord Shiva. Text number 21. Nilarakto palamboja Kala rendi varakaram Angsasara sachar prava Karandava nikujitam Nirarakto palamboja Kale rendi varakaram Angsasara sachakrava Karandava nikujitam Nila rakto palamboja Kalirendi varakaram Angsasara sachakrava Karandava nikujitam
Rakto palamboja
Nirarakto palamboja Kalerendi varakaram Angsasara sachakrava Karandava nikujitam Nilarakto palamboja Kalarendi varakaram Angsasara sachakrava Karandava nikujitam Nilarakto palamboja Kalerendi varakaram Angsasara sachakrava Karandava nikujitam
Nilarakto palamboja
Nilarakto palamboja Kalerendi varakaram
Angsasara sachakrava
Angsasara sachakrava
Karandava nikujitam
Karandava nikujitam. Well, you can just see the blue and the red and hear the chirping of the bird. This is one of those fabulous verses, of which there are quite a few in the Bhagavatam. Synonyms: Nila, blue. Rakta, red. Utpala, lotus. Ambhuja, born from the water. Kalada, another kind of lotus. Indivara, another kind of lotus. Akaram, the mind. Hangsa, swans. Sarasa, cranes. Chakrava, chakrava birds. Kalandava birds. Nikujitam, vibrated by their sounds. Those old Tarzan movies. You get all these sounds of all these birds in the forest. Sometimes we hear that with the peacocks and the turkey. That's a different kind of sound. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. In that great lake, there were different types of lotus flowers. Some of them were bluish, and some of them were red. Some of them grew at night, some in the day, and some, like the Indivara lotus flower, in the evening. Combined together, the lotus flowers filled the lake so full that the lake appeared to be a great mine of such flowers. Consequently, on the shores, there were swans and cranes, chakravakas, kalandavas, and other beautiful water birds standing about. The lovebirds are trying to get into the action here. Please repeat. In that great lake, there were different types of lotus flowers. Some of them were bluish, and some of them were red. Some of them grew at night, some in the day, and some, like the Indivara lotus flower, in the evening. Combined together, the lotus flowers filled the lake so full that the lake appeared to be a great mine of such flowers. Consequently, on the shores, there were swans and cranes, chakravakas, kalandavas, and other beautiful water birds standing about. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The word akaram, mine, is significant in this verse, for the reservoir of water appeared like a mine from which different types of lotus flowers were produced. Some of the lotus flowers grew during the day, some at night, and some in the evening, and accordingly, they had different names and different colors. All these flowers were present on that lake, and because the lake was so calm and quiet and filled with lotus flowers, superior birds, like swans, chakravakas, and kalandavas, stood on the shores and vibrated their different songs, making the entire scene attractive and beautiful. As there are different types of human beings, according to the association of the three qualities of material nature, there are similarly different types of birds, bees, trees, etc. Everything is dividing according to the three qualities of material nature. Birds like swans and cranes, who enjoy clear waters and lotus flowers, are different from crows, who enjoy filthy places. Similarly, there are persons who are controlled by the modes of ignorance and passion, and those who are controlled by the mode of goodness. The creation is so varied that there are always varieties found in every society. Thus, on the bank of this lake, all the superior birds live to enjoy that atmosphere created by that great reservoir filled with lotus flowers. Just to hear about it is refreshing to the mind. Nila rakto palam bhoja kala vendi varakaram Hangsasara Sachakrava Karandhava Nakujitam. In that great lake, there were different types of lotus flowers. Some of them were bluish and some of them were red. Some of them grew at night, some in the day, and some, like the Indirvara lotus flower, in the evening. Combined together, the lotus flowers filled the lake so full that the lake appeared to be a great mine of such flowers. Consequently, on the shores there were swans and cranes, chakravakas, karandavas, and other beautiful water birds standing about. Mukung karoti vachanam, angam lavete girim, jatkripatamaham bande, sigurum dinatarinam. Cool verse. Then what does all this have to do with Krishna? You might ask. Well, gee, it sounds nice, but, beautiful parks and places like that. It's just sense gratification.
Nice Hallmark card.
I mean, what does this got to do with Krishna? Prabhu, it's time to carry out the garbage. We have some service to do. But this is an indication of how the arrangement of nature can be conducive or perhaps not conducive for the development of spiritual consciousness. If one has a good environment in which to practice Krishna consciousness, then that is a favorable situation for one's spiritual development, for one's Krishna consciousness. So we are blessed here in this temple to have a nice arrangement of serenity, beauty, and peacefulness, except for when foul-mouthed, dog-like men come and try to contaminate the atmosphere with their consciousness, like happened the other night, the big Janmashtami celebration. But such a foul-mouthed, dog-like man was quickly dispatched, and the conducive atmosphere of Krishna consciousness was not really disturbed for much more than a moment or so. And the impending bliss was reestablished very quickly. Most people didn't even notice. So it helps to be in a favorable condition to execute Krishna consciousness. I had that experience. I was living in this little bitty house with my three brothers, and everybody, including me, was pretty much absorbed in the mode of ignorance. And then I began to try to practice Krishna consciousness, but I found that atmosphere was not conducive. It was not conducive. And one of the Radha Damodar buses came and parked in front of the house, and the Pujari wanted to come in and take a shower. So he came into the bathroom, he looked at the bathroom, and was like, ah. He said, I felt dirtier coming out of that bathroom than I did going in, even though I took a shower, because of the quality of ignorance was so all pervasive. And made me realize, just like there's an old song by the Animals from the 60s, we gotta get out of this place. It's the last thing we ever do. So to become, to remove oneself from an unfavorable circumstance and then get into proper and suitable surroundings for the execution of Krishna consciousness is important. And one can do that in one's own home, if one desires. Or if one is unable to, then one can do what? Sell the house, if required. Or not, depending on it. If one is able to. But the most important thing is association. And here we see this environment which the Prachetas are discovering is conducive for their meditation on Vishnu, Jayato, is it? Krita Yad Jayato Vishnu. That in the Krita, the Satya Yuga, the process for attaining self-realization was meditation on Vishnu. So this Leela of the Prachetas is taking place in the Satya Yuga, where people lived a very long time. Social conditions were very good. Environmental conditions were very good. For example, agricultural produce. In the Satya Yuga, you hardly had to farm because the earth was just yielding all this produce. So they weren't out there plowing the fields and, firing up the Mahindra tractors and, keeping a large storage container, diesel fuel next to the barn or whatever. No, the earth was just producing of its own accord, naturally, everything that people required: grains, fruits, vegetables, jewels, minerals, everything in profusion was just abundantly available. We may have noticed that those are not the conditions now, no longer. And that is because it is a different yuga, it's a Kali Yuga, in which everything is restricted. And even I've heard accounts that, for example, the nutritional quality of spinach that you get now in the supermarket is vastly reduced in nutrients compared to the spinach of 50, 60 years ago, even. So just like we were hearing from our preacher that as if it were possible, the campus is more degraded than it was last year. As if that were possible, but it is. So obviously referring to the behavior and the dress and the consciousness of the students. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada refers to the modern educational system as a slaughterhouse. The kids may be innocent and pure, although the way I grew up, innocent and purity was lost in the beginning of middle school. But when they get to the university, forget about it. The parents are no longer chaperoning or supervising the life of the young people. And they just go wild, like wild animals. And that is college life. That is education. Wait a minute, is that education? No, that is degradation. It's not education at all. And anyone who's been to a large university like the one we have here sees those conditions and experiences them. And for many, many decades, I was going door to door in large university communities. And I would not go to the dorms because they're just like wild animals who've had their leashes cut and they're just going nuts. But I much prefer to deal with graduate students, especially international graduate students who are always, because they hadn't been exposed to all that. They'd done their undergraduate back home in their own countries where social conditions were different and more controlled and more normalized. But we are the leaders of the free world, so our degradation is matched by no one. We are the most advanced in the principles of Kali Yuga. It's a fact. It is a fact. The international students were, graduate students especially, were very nice, very cultured, very cultured, sweet, civilized people. So these conditions described here, this beautiful lake, are very conducive for the meditation that the prachetas are going to undergo. And it just so happens this verse reminds me of another verse, which is right here. From an ashtakam called the Sadgoswami Ashtakam by Srila Srinivas Acharya. We play it every day when we put on the Prabhupada bhajans. Krishna Kirtana Paro Premamritam Bhamihi Dira Dira Jana Priyo Priyo Karo Nirmatsaro Pujito. What's the rest of that? Sri Chaitanya Kripa Bhara Bhuvi Bhavo Mahavaram Tarakao Vande Rupa Sanatanu Raghuyavo Sri Jiva Gopalako. So that Sad Goswami Astika Prabhupada really loved it. He recorded it more than once. In verse 5, and this you would not know from the translation that we have what verse 5 actually says. It starts off, Kujat kokila hangsasara sagana kirne mayura kule, which means, it's a description of Vrindavan. Kujat means cooing. Kokila is the cuckoos. Hangsa, swans. Sarasa, cranes. Gana, Akirne, crowded with flocks of Mayura, peacocks. Akule, in the constantly agitated motion. So this is a description of the Vrindavan atmosphere in which the 6 Goswamis were absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Of course, at that time, Sri Vrindavan Dham was a fairly isolated rural place inhabited by some farmers, some villagers, and some sadhus. And just a little bit different these days, I hear. Of course, Vrindavan is situated in Uttar Pradesh, a state of northern India, and UP is one of the most crowded and populated places on earth in terms of number of people per square kilometer. It's crowded. And Vrindavan did not used to be like that, even when I first visited back in the 1980s a couple of times. It was not very crowded. But now, oh, it is very crowded. And you probably find more monkeys than peacocks. So, more monkeys and pigs. But this verse is describing, and even just to hear the Sanskrit, Kujat kokila hangsasara sagana kirne mayura kule. So the peacocks are not static, they're dancing. Akule, in the constantly agitated motion. Peacocks moving and dancing. I lived for a short time in our Murari farm in rural Tennessee. And they had a lot of peacocks there. And they mostly roosted up in the trees and on the rooftops of the cabins there. And they were constantly in motion and constantly making cries. Our peacocks here are relatively quiet most of the time. But these peacocks, they were always going off all the time. So there was, the temple was situated, there was like a hill with a couple, dotted with a few cabins. And then it came down, there was a temple and there was a road, and then it went up again into a hill. So the temple's kind of like in a little valley. And you couldn't really, the outside world didn't exist for all intents and purposes. And so that valley was filled with those peacocks, more than a dozen. And they created a racket. Just like that, I said earlier, like the old Tarzan movies when I was a kid, they had these sound effects of the jungle, although it was filmed in a Hollywood studio, soundstage, but they had all the sound effects. So this is a very transcendental atmosphere of Sri Vrindavan. That atmosphere was especially manifest during the presence of Lord Krishna performing his pastimes. Way back in the day, 3000 BC, that's a long time ago. Akirne Mayura Akule, crowded with peacocks. There's one story told about when the deities of Krishna Balaram, they were carved in Jaipur, and they were brought by truck from Jaipur to the Krishna Balaram temple. There, it must have been 1974 or so. And it took place about 2 o'clock in the morning, and the truck arrived with the deities. And you have these Muslim workers, the truck drivers and the coolies, carrying the deities and stuff. But even the Muslim workers, it's described, it was recalled by devotees, that we were very careful with the deities. And they were talking, be very careful with Krishna, be very careful with Balaram. They were very Krishna conscious. And at that time, when the deities arrived on the truck at the Krishna Balaram Mandir, suddenly, even right before they arrived, the devotees heard like every peacock in Vrindavan was singing at the top of their lungs. And everyone woke up like they'd never heard such a thing. Wow, what's going on? Is it the end of the world? Is there a nuclear bomb? Has Krishna himself come and appeared and all the peacocks are in ecstasy? Well, yes. Krishna and Balaram have returned to Sri Vrindavan Dham in their deity form. And all the peacocks in the whole Vrindavan area were singing their glories at full volume. And devotees who lived in Vrindavan and know Vrindavan, they said, never heard anything like that before or since. It is just unprecedented, unbelievable, and everyone was just amazed at such a symphony. Sometimes here in the early part of the summer, when it's starting to get light a little bit earlier and before it gets hot, you can hear these. We've heard sometimes these doves, and these other, and then the birds in the trees, all the sparrows in the trees, and then the little parrots there, lovebirds, and the ringnecks, of which we're down to one ringneck now because one of them escaped, and we couldn't catch him, unfortunately. And they're all making these concerts right before sunrise, which is a common thing. I was living in the Potomac Temple, just outside of Washington, D.C., and there they have a creek and some trees. It's somewhat of a rural atmosphere. And in the early mornings in the summertime, the birds set up quite a cacophony in the early morning. Prabhupada says as soon as the morning comes, the birds are busy with questions and answers. They're all singing, but their questions and answers are, where is food, where is shelter, where is sex, stuff like that. But they're singing this great concert, just like in days of yore, the great kings would have reciters and musicians that would gather outside the king's chambers and they would perform a concert. There would be reciters singing the glories of the king. Oh, Raj, you are such a great king. all the people are happy and love you. You're such a great warrior, fought so many battles, and they're singing in different tunes, and then the musicians are playing their different stringed instruments and percussion instruments, and that's how the king would be awakened in the morning by a concert. Very nice, huh? Didn't have to go to Ticketmaster online and get cheated and pay, $500 for a seat in the back row to see some degraded pop star. But the concert would be there, and it was part of the court, part of the civilization, the beautiful music. Used to find in the previous ages that the music was always part of the court, and the musicians made their living by being part of the royal court. Even you see that in some of those old Egypt movies where they have these dancing girls and the musicians, and like in Moses and all those kind of movies, they do that. So that was the way things were. A nice atmosphere was created. So here we're hearing from Srinivasa Acharya about the atmosphere of the cooing of the cuckoos and the singing of the birds that we don't even, not sure what they are. The Sarasar cranes, the Hansa swans, and they have many different types of birds in Vrindavan. It's famous for the birds, actually, and the beautiful singing they do. And not only that, but in the next line, Nana Ratna Nibada Mula Vitapa Sri Yukta Vrindavane. That the trees, Vitapa, the trees, around the bases of the trees, which is Nibada Mula, Mula means root, Nana Ratna, they're encrusted with various types of jewels. You don't see that in the Swaro National Forest. The jewels around the bases of the cacti. No, they're more like scorpions. So it's a difference in quality. Sri Yukta Vrindavane. Sri means so beautiful, and Yukta means you're possessed or endowed with that beauty. And then this is describing the life of the six Goswamis. Radha Krishnam Aharnisham Prabhajatao Jiva Artha Tadao. Jivarta Dao Yao Muda. With great delight, they are Artha Dao, giving the Artha, the highest thing, to everyone, because Radha Krishna Maharnisham. Maharnisham means day and night. They are Prabhajatao, enthusiastically engaged in worshiping Radha Krishna. Radha Krishna, Aharnisham, day and night. Prabhajatao. They're so absorbed in enthusiastically worshiping Krishna that Jivarta Daya Muda, that with great delight and great happiness, they're bestowing this highest benediction upon human society by engaging in Krishna consciousness and then giving the Goswami literatures like Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction. And there's so many books written by Rupa Goswami. And there are even more books written by Jiva Goswami. And then you have the works of Sanatana Goswami, like the, what's it called? Brihad Bhagavatam, that's what I was thinking of. He wrote other works, but that's his most famous work. So, that is the description of Vrindavan as experienced by the six Goswamis, surrounded by the cooing of the cuckoos and the swans and the cranes and the crowded with flocks of peacocks who are constantly in agitated motion, dancing and singing the glories of Krishna. surrounded by trees that are encrusted with jewels around their roots. Sri Yukta Vrindavane, Vrindavan endowed with so much beauty. This word Yukta is also used in the Bhagavad Gita in various places. In Sanskrit, the words have sometimes more than one meaning. They'll have similar meanings or sometimes even opposite meanings. The same word. And this one verse came to mind because it's a really great verse from the 6th chapter of the Gita entitled Jnana Yoga. Jnana means meditation. So Krishna is describing in the 6th chapter how to achieve higher states, yogic states, through meditation and practice of the yoga system, which has its principles. Of course, the highest form of yoga is bhakti yoga, but that doesn't mean that, bhakti yoga is, we're above all yogic principles, so we don't even bother to follow any yogic principles. No, that is not correct. Because when one is elevated and is practiced in Krishna consciousness, one naturally follows yogic principles. And verse number 17 in the 6th chapter states, Yuktahara viharasya, yukta cetasa karmasu, yukta swapna vabhodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. Dukkha, the word dukkha means miseries. And the word ha means kill, to kill. Therefore, one of Krishna's names, he killed the Keshi demon, he's called Keshiha. I know a devotee with that name. Keshiha, the killer of Keshi. So Dukkha means to the killer of miseries. Dukkha, to become free from miseries, which is, everyone would like that. Even while we're in the material world, we're thinking, man, these miseries, like Sanatana Goswami said to Lord Chaitanya, who am I? What am I? And why are these miseries raining down upon my head? The threefold miseries. Oh, yes, that is an intelligent question. Why am I suffering? Why am I suffering like a dog? Did I do something wrong? And now I'm suffering? Well, yes, suffering is a result of karma, but just having a material body means automatically there's going to be suffering. But Krishna is giving a formula here. Yuktahara. Ahara means eating. Like ahara nidra bahaya. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. You know about that, the 4 principles of animalistic life. So yuktahara, regulated eating. And yukta viharasya. Viharasya means recreation. And yukta cetasa, regulated working for maintenance, because you have to work to maintain the body. And then you're just like a really lazy devotee who stays in his room and only comes out at prasadam time. Then you're not working for your maintenance. You're taking advantage. Yukta karmasu, in discharging duties, regulated performance of duties. Yukta swapna avabodhasya. Swapna means sleep. So yukta swapna, regulated sleep. Avabodhasya, regulated wakefulness. Yoga bhavati dukkha, one who is accustomed to this practice of yoga by being regulated, bhavati dukkha, he becomes free from miseries. So that is an element of Krishna consciousness, is to be very regulated. Go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, eat at regulated times, perform one's work in regulated times, keep regulated happiness, regulated principles of cleanliness, bathing, like rising early in the morning and bathing. These are all elements of yogic practice and they are elements of Krishna consciousness. Not that, oh yes, I am a devotee. I am above all the yoga rules and regulations. So I can go to bed late. I can get up late. I don't have to take a shower and brush my teeth. That's all a waste of time. This material body is just Maya. So why bother, to take care of anything? Just whatever, whenever, take prasadam, anytime, all the time, upon waking, right before going to sleep. No, not like that. That is a misconception, which I have seen. Some persons who are aspiring to become devotees maintain that misconception. No, Krishna says, yukta hara viharasya, yukta chetasa karmasu, yukta swapna babodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. That's how you become free from misery. And then if you live in this way, becoming regulated by practicing this yogic principle of regulation, then you will find that the material miseries are quite a bit mitigated in surprising ways for devotees. I was just reading, there was an article written for Back to Godhead magazine by Satyaraj about Peter Leghieri, who was the man who wrote the first article about Prabhupada in the East Village Other. And he had just happened to have spent like 4 years at a Catholic seminary. And so, and he was an investor and co-owner in the East Village Other. And when the other gentleman, who was the owner of the paper and the founder, which was founded in 1965, just when Prabhupada arrived in New York City. And then in October 1966, this other fellow happened to be high as a kite and walked through Tompkins Square Park and saw Prabhupada having kirtan, being surrounded by all these people. Underneath the tree is an elm tree that now has a plaque on it, the Prabhupada tree, as a name. The city of New York did that. And he thought it was he said there was a great saintly person there, even in his intoxicated state. And he went back to the offices of the paper and said, we got to write an article about this. This is incredible. Right here in New York, a saintly person, a great saint appearing in the streets of New York is unbelievable. He was just blown away by seeing Srila Prabhupada. We have to write an article. Well, who's going to write the article? No one wanted to do it. Well, we don't know anything about religion. I'm covering one person. I'm covering the hippie arts and crafts movement. I'm covering the head shop scene. I'm covering the microbiotic restaurant scene. I wouldn't know anything about all this. And they said to Peter Leghieri, well, you know theology and religion. You just came from Catholic seminary. So you're the religion guy. You go cover him. You go interview him. This is important. This is a big story. Somehow or other, Krishna had inspired them in the heart to realize this. And Peter Leghieri was like, I don't want to do that. They cajoled him and they pressured him and they forced him, and his girlfriend at the time later became his wife. They went and they spent 2 hours with Prabhupada at 26 2nd Avenue. They went to a program, kirtan, and they loved it. And then Prabhupada invited them up to his room. There's a couple of devotees there. And they spoke for a long time to Srila Prabhupada. And from that, he wrote the East Village Other article, which is now a reproduction of the photograph from that article is enshrined in our Sri Vrindavan temple. So, he said he thinks it's the only, and they have a copy of the article there. And he said, I think it's the only newspaper article that was ever enshrined in a temple. My article that I wrote about the Swami. And then him and his wife were giving remembrances of Srila Prabhupada. And the wife said that, over and above everything else, it was his amazing personal qualities that were so wonderful. Srila Prabhupada was such a wonderful person. And she was just taken with what great personal quality because of his Krishna consciousness. He was so attractive. Shama Sundara said that when he met Srila Prabhupada and got to know him, and heard him speak and associate with him, he felt that Srila Prabhupada was the most beautiful person he had ever met. Not like he was some, sculpted Hollywood, movie star, bodybuilder with sculpted features and an aquiline nose and high cheekbones and big and strong and handsome and fit to be, photographed and put in magazines or appear in movies. Not that kind of beauty. But he exhibited his personal quality of Krishna consciousness that was so beautiful to behold. He said, I'd never seen anyone beautiful like this. Never, ever. Even Ishan Prabhu, who's the originator of the Balaram Mridanga. Ishan Prabhu, he was living in the forest in New Mexico somewhere out in the wilderness, but he used to come to Alatra Temple a few years back and spend some time there. And he described that when you saw Prabhupada, and you heard him speak, and this is his exact words used, he said it had like an orgasmic quality upon your heart. I couldn't believe when I heard that. I said, wow, I never heard anybody say anything like that. It's amazing. You're just like, he's so fantastic. He's so wonderful. Your heart is melted. You're just moved by him. And that was not like a material thing, but it was his transcendental qualities. Due to his being a extremely rare and elevated Mahatma, a great devotee of Krishna, who, by his mercy and by the mercy of Krishna, walked the earth amongst us. Although it is said that when Srila Prabhupada walked on his morning walks, one devotee gave an account. They were walking through this wet, grassy field. This is in England, in the fields near Lechmore Heath, the Bhaktivedanta Manor. And devotees were walking behind Prabhupada and they noticed, wait a minute, he's not leaving any footprints. And of course, walking through that wet, tall grass, you leave a clear trail. And everyone else, there was a clear trail where they're walking. But Prabhupada, who was in front of the group, he's walking along, there's no footprints. He's not touching the ground. He's gliding through the material energy, exhibiting some mystic powers, but not making a big deal or show about it. But the devotees noticed. There's no footprints. How does he do that? And then the devotee, Prabhupada, was in his 70s, mid to late 70s. The devotees were in their 20s, and they were huffing and puffing to keep up with Prabhupada. He was outpacing them. But yet he appeared to not be strenuously doing anything. Just gliding along by mystic power without endeavoring at all. Anyway, those have been stories that devotees have told of apparent miracles. Miracles mean something which defies the laws of physics as they are understood by the Department of Physics at the university. But there are principles beyond the consciousness of ordinary persons. One's access to spiritual consciousness and ability to perceive things on the spiritual level is based on one's purification, not on one's instruments in the laboratory and one's books of scientific principles. But one can perceive things that are beyond the range of normal perception through purification. That is a whole other subject. There's a book by Sariputta about understanding different levels of what's going on in the universe. But the way to understand is through purification and elevated consciousness. And we'll talk about that another time because there's some fascinating stories about that in the history of Westerners encountering sadhus in the Eastern realm. So we'll stop here. And the first question comes from Indupati.
Hare Krishna. Where is this lake? I remember in the fourth canto, there's the depiction of Kailash. This is not Kailash, though. This is in the Himalayas somewhere?
I'm not sure. I have to research further. But yeah, this is not Kailash. This is talking about a bay that's by the ocean. It's described in the next verse. So we'll see as we go further along. But, you know, just because there's the descriptions here doesn't mean that you can find it on the map. Because there are other realms, there are higher realms that are not on the map.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice class. Very, very like poetic and beautiful. Just two comments. One is not comparing anybody to Prabhupada, nor comparing anybody to any other devotees. Just, you know, there's a lot of elevated devotees in ISKCON, but I had a reaction the first time I saw Radhanath Swami in San Diego, and he walked around the corner, and the first thing that came to my mind was, this is the most beautiful person I've ever seen. That was the immediate thought from my, you know, I've never seen anybody more beautiful, because he had just so much grace and so much, you know, just grace, you know, elegance in his behavior with everybody. And it just struck me so hard.
One devotee gave an account, a younger devotee of a senior devotee who was doing Sankirtan, I think it was in Pittsburgh. And he saw him, you know, distributing books and talking to people. And he realized, he said, this is the coolest guy I've ever seen. He was so cool. He was getting an impression of the devotee's Krishna consciousness. It struck him in such a way. It was very attractive. So cool. The coolest guy I've ever seen. So attractive. And he was, you know, wearing a pair of, you know, cheap Walmart, or back in those days, Kmart pants, and like the $5 cloth canvas shoes. And not that he was dressed in some fabulous way. He was just wearing, you know, t-shirts and pants. But by his consciousness, he was distinct from everybody else on that downtown street. The coolest guy in the whole downtown.
Also, an extension to the story of Prabhupada walking on the grass, Jamuna actually asked Prabhupada about that, and Prabhupada said something like, this you will have to understand later, or you cannot understand this now, or this will take some progress. But she actually asked him about it. And he said,
there's another story about Prabhupada. A monkey came into his room, and Prabhupada spoke to the monkey in monkey language. And the devotee witnessed it, and he was like, Prabhupada spoke to the monkey, and the monkey spoke back in monkey language. And the devotee was like, Prabhupada speaks monkey? Didn't even know there was a monkey language. But Prabhupada knew it. He was empowered. Anyone else? But he is so kind that he's giving us everything in English so that we can understand it. Which, for the demigods and the higher planets, English is pretty much monkey language. We're speaking the monkey language. All right, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.